Hey, here we are for another episode under the baobab tree. How are you doing? I am doing fine. I always try to record these podcasts around 5 a.m. in the morning so there isn't too much noise outside. But I'm sure you have already heard lots of chickens and birds in the background during previous episodes. And I'm also close to a road and a school, so you might have heard even children playing or some cars in the background. Anyway, in this episode, I want to talk about being defensive. And I don't mean being defensive in the sense that it's physical, like physical defense, because someone is attacking you or you think you'll be attacked. No, I want to talk about being verbally defensive. The reason why I'm making this episode is that this is something I recently discovered that I had. I finally recognized this blind spot of myself that I have the tendency to become defensive. And maybe you also know someone who is defensive often, or maybe that's you. Or maybe you also don't recognize that part within yourself. When you're defensive, you have the feeling you need to defend yourself. Duh. Which means in one way or another, we are having the feeling we are being attacked. And how do most of us react when it feels we're being attacked? We fight, we flight, we freeze. Being defensive is part of the fight reaction because you are fighting back, even if it is with a facial expression, which is more passive-aggressive, or even when it is with words, reacting in a defensive way. If you don't have the feeling you're being attacked, you wouldn't be defensive. It's actually simple like that. I find this super interesting because think about people you know who are really defensive. Is there someone who defends herself or himself often? Chances are this person feels attacked more quickly. And I know this might sound a bit extreme because I wouldn't have thought I felt attacked the moments that I became defensive. But yeah, it's a natural reaction we can have. And the thin line here is, are you really being attacked? Or is it your perception of being attacked? Because sometimes we have a wound where we think the world is against us or we think that other people don't have our best interests at heart. So in a way you distrust more or think you need to be alert or defend yourself more. And that wound may color the way you see the world. It's not necessarily the reality, but in this case, already before someone said or did something, you may be ready to defend yourself right away. In general, there are different reasons why we have the feeling we need to defend ourselves. It all works on a subconscious level. It's more of a feeling, like a reflex or a reaction we have. And defending ourselves verbally is not a conscious choice, like, oh, I decide now to defend myself. I'm not saying this doesn't happen, but then it's already more thought through or even strategic, like how it can be in a war when it's physical defense. But I'm talking here about the defense that comes pretty automatically without thinking about it. So what are the reasons? Why do we have the feeling we need to defend ourselves? Well, I've come up with some. I'm sure there are way more than the ones I'll share here, but there are 5 that I want to share. The first one is when we feel someone is judging us, our lifestyle, our religion, our choices. The second one is when we have the feeling the other person is not hearing us or doesn't understand us. The third one, when someone has other beliefs than we have or we don't agree. The fourth one, when we want to protect something or someone. And the fifth one, when we feel we are accused wrongly. What I find beautiful about defending is that actually you go in the act of defending because you care. You care about your beliefs, you care about the other person, you care about yourself, but also about the relationship. You want that other person to see you, to get you, to understand you, to love you. And if you wouldn't care, you wouldn't even put energy in defending anymore. You defend because you have hope, because you believe it may change something. And because you care. From all the reasons of defending I just mentioned, which, as I said, there are probably way more of, I became defensive sometimes when someone else had other beliefs than me or I was not agreeing. Not always, and I'm also still learning, but now I am aware of it. So it would go like that. I would be with someone in a conversation about how you should start your morning, or about what we think of some famous person, or what is healthy food. And if we didn't agree on it, what happened with me is that I would come with all these arguments that would support my own beliefs. Now, if you are with a person who is open to receive the arguments and you are also open to hear their arguments, it's just a healthy discussion. But if you are with another person who also feels defensive, it just becomes a firing of arguments on two sides without someone listening. And where does that get us? Like, what is the point of it? What does that get us? Aside being very tired and drained afterwards. But so, once I recognized my own defensiveness around my beliefs or how I see the world, I started diving deeper into it. And I realized that we can become defensive too when we are insecure about our beliefs. Almost as if in giving the arguments, you are trying to convince yourself because the opinion of the other person is a threat. A threat for what, you could ask? What's the worst that can happen? That you lose your opinion or change your opinion? It made me realize how much all of this is tied to ego and identity, and how it's especially difficult for us to let go of beliefs that we have that are somehow intertwined with who we think we are or our identity. So if someone judges the way we live or our religion or the way we eat, the reason we feel defensive is because we take it personal. In a way, we think we are the way we live. We are our religion. We are what we eat. It's part of who we are and our identity. And anyone who thinks differently or says something that opposes your beliefs can become a threat for your ego, a threat for your identity. But we know we aren't our religion, that we are not our lifestyle, our political choice, the country we live in, and so on. We only identify with it very strongly sometimes. To come back to insecurity, if you are confident and sure in who you are, other people's judgments and opinions or expressions will touch you less. So you will have less the feeling you are being personally attacked, and therefore less the need to defend yourself in personal relationships. There is nothing wrong with defending yourself. You have that right. It's only when you are defensive in such a way that is highly emotionally charged that it can create a conflict. And again, even a conflict is even not always bad, as out of a conflict, new things can grow. It can clear the air. But it is good to see if it's all worth it. I find it interesting how it can be so difficult for us when we don't agree with one another. And then we have this saying, let's agree to disagree, which is to settle discussions or bring back the peace. But sometimes I also feel it's a way to mask the fact that we disagree, because we're so uncomfortable when we disagree with one another. And then when we say, let's agree to disagree, then now we're agreeing again on something, so it's fine. And what if it's just okay to disagree? You believe this, I believe that. We are all so different, luckily. So it's only normal we see the world in a different way. I believe this, you believe the opposite. We disagree, and these two realities can live next to one another. They can exist simultaneously. I know, of course, it's not always so easy when it comes to making decisions and things in society or on a macro level. But when you have the tendency to defend yourself often, it can help to look at it in that way. I'm not coming with tips and tricks in this episode around being defensive, because in my opinion, it's not something we need to change right away. It's a natural reaction, and I just wanted to talk about it today because I find it very interesting, and it's a reaction that can teach us a lot. In a way, there can be a lot of wisdom in it if you explore it. What I do think is good for us is that we learn to recognize within ourselves where we get defensive and why. So when do you have the tendency to defend yourself? What or who do you want to protect? And what do you identify with? What do you believe in? And even if there is a particular person you always get defensive towards, you can also investigate this. Why? Where lies the friction? Why with that person? But you can also focus on where you care for that person. And reflecting on these questions is such a good and beautiful way of getting to know yourself better and to eventually maybe communicate differently with others, or to feel more confident in who you are. If you want to work with me and dive deeper in yourself, I invite you to come and join us in Rooted Within. It's an online program with different experiences that you can go through on your own rhythm. And going through this journey strengthens your confidence, teaches you how to not let your fear stop you. You learn the root of why you don't feel good enough, and you learn how to deal with criticism if that's something that is difficult for you to deal with. You find all the info in the show notes. You can also sign up there. This is actually one of the last episodes of season 2. I think there are 2 other ones that will follow. And if you enjoyed this episode or you're enjoying all the episodes of this podcast, please feel free to share with friends or family. It's amazing that you guys are sharing this with one another, because that's how more people get to know this episode. Same if you give some beautiful stars on Spotify or on the app you're listening to, or even a review on Apple Podcasts. I'm so grateful for everyone who takes these few minutes to do this, because it really makes the difference. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day, and until the next, bye-bye.